Patreon. We're going to do some trailers on there. There's been a lot of talk about studio failures. In particular, Disney is having a very rough year. This is the fourth year in a row that Disney, in all of its properties, including the Marvel properties and so forth, and the Disney and the Pixar related properties, this is the fourth year in a row that Disney did not have a $billion year. And they put out quite a bit of products. I wasn't aware of this, but the movie Wish, which is a Pixar film, which opened a few weeks ago, is apparently underperforming. And of course, prior to that, a few weeks earlier, the Marvels has grossly underperformed and has pretty much fallen off the radar almost entirely. I think by the second week, it lost possibly domestically 70+% of its gross. So now they're looking at the studio heads. And I believe Bob Iger, who is the head of Disney, said, and I don't know if we could pull this up, B-Show, when they asked him, why are these movies not doing so well? He had some interesting things to say, but one of the things he said was it's because there was no studio executives on the sets overseeing these properties, which is a big thing, which is an old-fashioned sort of idea that studio heads would send the big wigs down to make sure everybody was doing their job, which is a fascinating thing when you think about it, Bisha, right? I mean, this is really interesting what he has to say here.
When historically executives have meddled in movies, making them worse. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of a story, and I reference Rob Zombie quite a bit because he talks about Bob Weinstein.
Yeah,
but I don't think there's ever been a movie that people have come out and said, what really helped me make this great film? The executives. There were so many suits on set telling me what I need to do. It's like, no, like I could understand if they didn't think there was enough oversight, and maybe with this expanding like CG and stuff like that, like maybe there aren't enough key people in key places. But I've never, ever in my life heard of a situation where a movie was made better because there were more suits getting involved with the movies. Not once.
Yeah, it's fascinating because he's basically saying, we're going to quote, this is his quote. This is not a paraphrasing. This is a quote. Quality needs attention. It doesn't happen by accident. Quantity, in our case, diluted quality, he said per NBC News. And he would say, I would say right now, my number one priority is to help the studio turn around creatively. The Marvels appeared to a disappointing $47 million this month, marking the lowest opening ever for an MCU movie. There's only a number of reasons to point to that lead to the reality of the mix of them. The overall struggle superhero market that they've had in 2023, the onslaught of Marvel Disney content. We've all had this conversation till we're blue in the face. Shah, this is probably honestly, this is a very dumb thing for a studio executive to say, because he's basically saying that, it's a little bit more meat to that story. He's saying that there was nobody on the set of, say, the Marvels to make changes to make the films better. Do you think this is just them trying to save their ass because of how wildly unpopular studio executives are after the strike?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of deflecting and not taking any kind of like accountability for losing that creative juice, I don't like when people do this, man. Like accountability to me is a big thing as an adult, especially when when your name holds this much weight. I think you should, get your crowd back by just admitting like, hey, we maybe put out too many projects and we lost track of, what we used to do. We're going to get back on track next year.
Right.
But deflecting like this and passing the blame on by saying that, we essentially weren't on the set to micromanage every second. Like, come on, man.
It's pretty scummy.
You guys dropped the ball. Just admit it and pick it back up when you can. But I don't know, man. But if they don't pick it up, though, I don't give a shit because I'm not a fan, so it doesn't really matter for me. But for their fans' sake, like yourself and Drew Yori and everybody else that watches it, I think it would help them out. It would benefit them to just admit that, hey, we fucked up and we're going to do better next year.
Yeah. B-Show, what are your thoughts? Because you've seen a lot of these properties, unlike Shah. You've seen a lot of these properties.
It seems like too many cooks in the kitchen already. Even with Star Wars, because I'm more familiar with the Star Wars stuff and the franchises it's been the past couple of years than I am Marvel. I've seen the Marvel movies. I haven't followed a ton of that stuff.
Right.
There's actually a rumor going around. I don't know if it's been substantiated yet that Kathleen Kennedy is going to get finally ousted.
Well, they brought in that other person. Yeah, they brought in another person.
And because she was caught allegedly taking money from one project and using it for another. And in her clause, allegedly it says she can't be fired unless it's with, something criminal.
Mhm.
And that's the take right now, is that something's going on. So
Hmm.
like, if you think about how far astray these franchises have gone because of the decisions of executives, the decisions of the studio, we have to be like the Kathleen Kennedy thing on South Park,
Yeah.
put someone in it, make them gay, make it lame, make it diverse. Like,
Put a chick in it, make it gay, make it lame. Right.
thank you. Exactly. Like, even Bob Iger or some executive recently has come out and said, we need to make movies that make money. It's great that you want to do all this other stuff. You want to have a message. You want to say something. That's great. But at the end of the day, it's got to make money. So
Right.
it's really an odd stance for him to take now, unless this is a polite way of him trying to rein this in so that they can have more executives there day to day to see what's getting out of hand. But it seems, again, you're talking about dilution of a property. Now you're diluting the day to day vision. Just have a story Bible, have an executive producer like a Dave Filoni or someone like that, or
Which, yeah, Chris Matthews brought up. They put him over Kathleen Kennedy, apparently.
yeah, and it's like, have someone there that knows the product, have a story Bible, follow these rules. You can deviate from this, you can play with that,
Mhm.
but don't break the rule, and go from there. You don't need 30 executives overseeing every move. I've never been a part of an office that's benefited from micromanagement.
No.
So, Shah might be happy because if this happens, maybe in 2 years there won't be as many superhero movies.
Yeah, I think
getting
what they'll
greenlit.
well, I think Shah's right. I think what they'll end up doing is they'll make less of these movies unless they're more profitable. But Jodie Foster today, Jodie Foster, maybe one of the best living actresses of all time. I mean, best living, top 5 possibly. She doesn't work that much, but when she does, it's a big fucking deal. She's older now. They asked Jodie Foster said was criticizing the Marvel movies today, which is because she just did a season of True Detective that's going to air in January. And that Jodie Foster was saying basically that the superhero movies, some of them were pretty good, but its time has come and gone. Like, she thinks it's time for them to go, which is a convenient thing to say when they're bad, right? But you have to realize, no matter what anyone says about these movies, 15 years ago, these movies literally bailed Hollywood out of the doldrums. Like they saved the MCU saved the cinema. Like, it saved movies. It absolutely did, because there was no movies making these kind of money. It was nothing but rom-coms and hostage movies with like Liam Neeson or some shit. Like, that's all we had. It was rom-coms. Like, Ryan Reynolds was in rom-coms like before he was in these movies, before he was Deadpool. So I get what Jodie Foster's trying to say, and I know this is something Shah's been saying for a long time. But the reality is, you got to give credit where credit's due. This industry, the comic book industry, saved the cinematic universe. Movies were dying. This is when they started jacking prices up and stuff like that. Nobody was lining up to go see Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds in a wacky fucking romance comedy.
No, I get that, dude. I can't discredit them for what they did, and I'm not here to do that. But at the same time, bad special effects and Marvel should not be in the same sentence. Their movies are they're high budget movies. Like, them being cheap. It's like going to a burger joint, right? At first, when it's a mom and dad shop, they have the time, they have the patience. Burgers are amazing. They blow up and turn into a chain. Now you're getting frozen burgers with a guy that doesn't give a shit because he has to flip 375 of them in an hour. Right. The quality goes down. The quality control is the problem, is because they're overwhelmed. They're doing too many projects. They're putting in like slave labor hours. Like, they're talking about they have people working 20 hours out of it. Like, what?
Yeah, dude, they're outsourcing the special effects.
Yeah,
that.
That's where you lose people. You know what I mean? You're not taking care of your inner circle. People are probably tired. They're not putting in their best, and they're just doing too much. This is what happens when you do too much. Same with wrestling. You remember wrestling was dope when it was 1 day a week?
Yeah.
They tried to move to 5 shows. What happened? People got tired of this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is true. I mean, but what's interesting, and we're going to end on this note because we got a lot of stuff to get to in the Patreon. There was a critic, I don't remember this person's name, but I had said this recently, that said almost dollar for dollar, Killers of the Flower Moon, which, by the way, just won the New York Critics Film Choice Award last night. Which is a precursor to like all the big awards. Killers of the Flower Moon lost the same amount of money at the box office that the Marvels did. But I don't see it, but there's nobody talking about that, why that is. And they said that's very strange, because Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro are two of the most famous people walking on the planet Earth. And so it was maybe the greatest living director directed it. So why is it that when they lose $100 million, it's like, meh? But when the Marvels loses $100 million, it's the sky is falling, everything's terrible, the movie's too woke, everybody's terrible, everybody hates comic books. Not wrong. I think the difference is Killers of the Flower Moon is going to win 50 awards in the next 4 months, and no one's going to fucking touch these movies again. So the reason is the comic movies have to make the box office because they're not going to get the money from winning awards, from getting the attention, from being re-released, because it's going to win Best Picture or Best Director or Best Cinematography or Best Actor or Best Actress. What do you think of that, Shah? Do you think that's a fair comparison? Because it's not fair to compare these movies because seldom will any of these movies ever do anything other than make box office.
No, I get what you're saying. I don't think it's fair at all, though, because you're comparing Killers of the Flower Moon being a failure one time to the MCU drastically declining movie after movie after. If Scorsese put out 3 movies and all 3 of them bombed, people would be talking about like, damn, dude, Scorsese, he shit the bed 4 times in a row. I think that's why people are talking about. It's not that Marvel missed one time. I mean, I don't follow it, but us discussing it, it seems like they've been declining steadily. Like it's not, you know what I mean? I think there's a huge difference because this seems to be a pattern in that universe. Whereas Scorsese, he didn't put out a bad product. People are saying these are bad movies.
Right.
You know, Scorsese just didn't do well because the movie one is 3.5 hour fucking long movie. And secondly, it's not a movie that it's I don't want to call it an art house movie, but it's one of these dramatic, super fucking.
Oh, it's a bummer movie, dude. It's a bummer movie. Like it's a bummer.
Yeah.
It's not a feel good. It's like The Whale. The Whale didn't make a lot of money. The Whale didn't last year. The Whale didn't make a lot of money, but you knew it was going to win the award.
That's what I mean, though. It's made for cinephiles that appreciate that kind of cinematic experience. Whereas MCU, you have your kids that want to go to the movie. They want to see it 5 times because they're little kids and they want to see Superman. I mean, not Superman, but whatever, Spider-Man. It's a different experience, man. Because I mean, that's again the MCU. You're also targeting kids, adults, all ages. Whereas Killers of the Flower Moon, probably 30 and up. Like I don't see 19-year-olds going to see this movie.
Well, remember I told you that opening weekend they had like 60% of the audience was people under 35, but then they never went again. Like nobody else went.
Yeah, people that actually appreciate the art of filmmaking.
Right. They're probably cinephiles or people who study art, the art of movies. Or
just my own taste. When I was in my mid-20s, I didn't give a fuck about like the cinematic experience. I just wanted a quick horror. I didn't appreciate film like I do now. You know what I mean? You grow with your taste. You know what I mean? So I think it's different. MCU, they have everyone to cater to, and it's also a pattern of decline. Whereas Martin Scorsese has more of a niche audience, and it's only happened one time versus, it being a pattern. So,
Bisha, what do you think? Do you think it's unfair to compare them both losing $100 million?
I think it is because I also think it goes back to when you take a beloved property that has baggage with it. And repeatedly, Disney, through Marvel, through Lucasfilm, they took these properties and have been doing it elsewhere too, but Marvel and Lucasfilm are the 2 big ones. They've pulled out these properties. They have beaten them like a cheap rug. They have alienated the original fan bases who kept these alive for a long time in a number of ways. And they fucked with the secret sauce. So like, a lot of wrestling fans probably in the chat. You guys remember ECW? ECW, I don't know if I'd say it was underground by 1999 when I found it on TNN. It was in its later days. It was more homogenized, more mainstream. But then I went back and watched the old tapes because I had a buddy who was a trader. So then One Night Stand happens. It's this big thing. Now there's a demand. And Vince McMahon goes, oh, I can make money with this shit. Right. What's the first thing they did? They brought in the old guys. They jobbed them out. They pushed Bobby Lashley. They pushed, I can't even remember the names, but it was a bunch of guys who looked pretty.
Guys they couldn't fit into their regular roster. Right.
Right. And then they brought on Bob Holly and he beat the shit out of like Sabu and Dreamer.
And
Van Damme.
Sandman. Yeah.
And that's exactly what Marvel and what Lucasfilm have done to these properties under the Disney umbrella. So I think there's a lot bigger expectation and a lot bigger expectation. There's a lot bigger microscope on it from the fan base who are very vicious and very hardcore. And the studio, after doing that, waged war on social media and through articles and through AstroTurf.
Right, that's very true. Yes.
Yeah, AstroTurf, news articles.
Right. You had critics helping out, going, well, it's a racist and sexist, and that's why people didn't want to go. That's why they didn't see the movie, because they're racist and they're sexist. And it's like, well, right. Why did they see everything else? Like, why did Barbie do $1 billion? It's like, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
And on top of that, they took a niche, a big niche, because comic properties and Star Wars are big fandoms, but not to quote Wayne's World twice in a show, but they did the whole, hey, let's take Led Zeppelin and let's try to make them the Bee Gees. And it's like,
Right.
no, it doesn't work like that. So not only did they alienate the core, but they tried to change
Yeah,
these
that's a good
movies to
point.
appeal to the mass audience. It would almost be like Blumhouse taking like Terrifier and signing Damien and going, all right, but now we're going to take it PG and Art's going to like dance and sing.
Yes,
Like, no,
art. Yes, art's going to be an angel.